Welcome to Theological Grazing.
In 2024, my plan is that I would preach through the Gospel of John. Obviously, I can't completely plan out that far, but as far as it is possible within my own plans, I would like to preach the Gospel of John. And as I've been preparing for that, even now, honestly, it's a little bit intimidating to me because the way that John writes and just the poetic nature and the way in which he writes, where it's so interconnected to everything, right? The fact it's so large and grand, where he begins and says, in the beginning was the Word. All of a sudden, it's just like that in itself is so huge that I just don't even totally know where to start in preaching it. So I felt like I have to get started even now. So I've started to read and study John a little bit. I've just been reading and listening through it, and will continue to do so for a while, just to meditate on it. But I noticed something the other day, and maybe this won't be the clearest of thoughts, but this is my new kind of audio journal, I guess, so I can do whatever I want, and maybe it will be a benefit to you. I noticed something that I want to look into more, so maybe this is as much a reminder for me as anything else. I noticed that the stories of Nathaniel in the first chapter of John, and the story of the woman at the well in, I think it's John 4. I don't completely remember. But these are two stories that are actually extremely similar. And I wonder if there are other places in John where this shows up. I don't know, and maybe there's not, but they have pretty similar. It's a pretty similar flow of a story. They have some overlap. So in the story of the woman at the well, Jesus shows up at this well where this woman is, and it starts with kind of a normal conversation a little bit, but very quickly it turns into Jesus saying, "Woman, if you knew who you were talking to, you would know that I could give you this living water that, fountains up to eternal life." And she says, "Give me some of this water." And he says, when he says that, he can give her this water, he says, "Truly, truly, I say unto you." And he reveals things about her before this that make her realize that she's talking to somebody who knows things that he shouldn't know. He says, "Go call your husband," and she says, "Well, I don't have a husband." He says, "You're right. You've had 5, and the man you're with now, you're not married to." And she, says, "Sir, I perceive you are a prophet." And then they continue their conversation. But when Jesus meets with Nathaniel for the first time, it starts in kind of a similar way, where he tells Nathaniel something that he shouldn't know. Right from the start, he tells him something that he really shouldn't be able to know. Right? He says, "Here is this great Israelite. I saw you." Or he says something about him, right? "You are this great Israelite," or something like that. And then Nathaniel says, "Lord, how do you know these things?" He says, "I saw you seated under the tree." And Nathaniel kind of marvels at this. And so it becomes clear that Jesus is a prophet. He knows things that he shouldn't otherwise know. And Jesus says, "You marvel at this. Well, you see this and you marvel. I tell you this, you will see heaven open and the Son of Man ascending on high." Jesus tells the woman at the well, you come here for this water. Well, I tell you, I could give you water that fountains up to eternal life. in both cases, Nathaniel and this woman at the well are coming for something, right? They think they're getting one thing. They're looking for one thing. Nathaniel, it seems that the word that keeps coming up is sight, right? He sees, and Jesus sees, and he sees. Says, I see this about you. And the woman at the well, she also sees, right? She says, she doesn't see, she perceives, right? Perceive that you're a prophet, or she sees that you're a prophet. And so there's this kind of sight, but she's coming out for water. And Jesus says, well, I can give you a greater kind of water, right? I can give you water. If you knew who I was, you would get something even better. And for Nathaniel, he says, you come here and you marvel that I can see this about you. Well, guess what? You're going to see heaven open up. I'm sure I'm mixing up some of this story and not quite getting it right, but there's something here. There's clearly a connection in the language of the stories. Having just listened to it, I know there's something going on here. So this is maybe, again, as much a reminder for me that this is something I want to look into and check out, and then see if this pattern of how Jesus, he comes, there's an expectation by somebody who meets him, and he not only shows them something beyond that expectation, but he promises them how they can receive it, and they can receive it in him. And I wonder if this is something that shows up in other parts of the Gospel of John.
Well, that's all, folks. If you could help me out, rate and review this podcast, share it with a friend, go ahead and email me if you have any questions. We're out.